look at where you have the biggest drop off from one step to the next. And that's
Yeah.
the first place to put in some automated follow-ups, just some emails that are relevant to where they are in the sales process.
Welcome to Insights into Success. We're with your host, Paul Dodds. We hope to educate, inspire, and motivate you to achieve your own personal success. We talk to guests from all around the world from a variety of walks of life to hear the realities of their own journey to success. What challenges have they faced? How have they coped with failure? And what have been the keys or will be the keys to their own success? In our Read to Succeed interviews, we talk books that have inspired our guests, and for some, they share their secrets to marketing success. Join us as we give you insights into success. Welcome to Insights into Success, and today our special guest is Kyle Stout. Now, Kyle, I'm going to ask you just to kick us off by telling us a little bit about you, where you're from, and how you've come to do what you're doing these days.
Okay. So yeah, I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was always interested in marketing, but that wasn't actually what I formally studied in college. And the way I got started into marketing was I started as a freelance copywriter, and I was really just doing a lot more sales copy for businesses' websites. So these were a lot of one-off projects. And then, like whenever clients would have stuff that would come up for other things that they needed copy, I would do that. And after a while, I noticed that email marketing was one area that I enjoyed, but also I was consistently seeing the best results for my clients. And I realized this is something where I can work with the same client on a recurring basis, as opposed to just doing these one-off projects of helping them with their website updates and everything. And so that's what led me to start my agency, Elevate and Scale, in 2019, where we do primarily email. We also do SMS and a few other things related to retention marketing, but primarily working on email marketing with e-commerce businesses. So businesses that are using Shopify or similar platforms to sell products online.
And obviously you started it just before COVID. How was that for you going through the COVID process?
Yeah, that was interesting because my wife was pregnant with our first child. So, and she was due in April of 2020. So had a baby on the way, had just started this business. COVID happens. And I will say it was nerve wracking, but in a weird way, I kind of liked the challenge there's a little bit of uncertainty. But I have to say, I was pretty fortunate because the type of businesses I work with benefited tremendously from COVID, at least early on, at least within the first year or so, because people, all of a sudden now, they can't travel, they can't spend their money in the ways that they traditionally did as much. They weren't eating out as much, they weren't traveling. So they started spending their money buying stuff online more than they ever had before, which created a lot of opportunities for the businesses we worked with. And, I feel very fortunate that it didn't really have a negative impact on me business-wise or my clients, really. It wasn't until later on when all these supply chain issues start showing up and everything, that's whenever a lot of my clients start getting hit, really hard from a different side of the business.
Right. And so for you, what is it about email marketing that you love so much?
So one of the things I always come back to is that it's a channel where you can communicate directly with your leads and your customers on a platform that you actually own and control versus social media. So social media, everything, all these other platforms, of course, they're great and you should definitely use them. But with email, it's that as you build up your email list, you have this really useful asset that is very valuable for businesses. And some of the things I like about it, as far as, from the perspective of someone offering marketing services, is that I like that it's easy to see where the results are coming from, especially with the software that we use. Everything is tracked, very meticulously. So we know that whenever we send an email about a certain product, we know how many people opened, clicked, they bought the product from the email, or they clicked the email, they went to the site and they bought a different product that we didn't even mention, and which happens a lot. A lot of times you'll do an email, and if you just were to look at the numbers and you didn't really dig into it a little more, you'd think, oh, that was a success because we got a lot of sales. And then you might find out you only sold one of the thing you were promoting, but people just got to the site and they bought a bunch of other stuff. and then it gives you ideas for other emails you can do about those products. So yeah, I really like the fact that it's, again, this channel where you have direct access, and it tends to be pretty consistent from month to month in terms of what you can do with it for generating sales.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that well, I imagine that it's part of the enjoyment of it is that you get more direct feedback on what's working and what's not, as opposed to using other channels. Like you sort of touched on going into the back end of the software and actually being able to see who's opened the emails and who's bought, etc. Whereas in marketing, often you're in a scenario where you don't get that level of feedback, do you? Which then, makes it more challenging to be as certain about what's working and what's not.
Yeah, so you can, I mean, if you go to a person's contact profile in the email software, you can see all the different emails that they have engaged with or not engaged with. So you can get that detailed. But then from a little, a higher level, you can create segments within your list. So for example, you could have segments of, leads who have never purchased, one-time customers, repeat customers, VIP customers, and you can have all different kinds of these segmented groups. But then from there, you can group them together and run reports on those segments. So now you get a snapshot view of how do your one-time customers engage with emails versus your VIPs, and what's the average order value of those different groups, and things like that. So yeah, it becomes, really useful where, I mean, for me, I like to share a lot of information that for clients that I think is helpful to their other marketing endeavors. And a lot of times, they might be working with a paid media team, and we'll communicate back and forth with their paid media team of, hey, these are some of the angles we're taking in emails that are working. You should try these with ads, and they'll tell us, hey, these are the audiences we're targeting, and then we'll start to cater the content a little more towards those audiences for people who are coming into the list. So, yeah, I think it can be very useful across the board like that.
And one of the things I really wanted to ask you though about is, how do you counter the issue of people feeling like they're inundated with emails? I've been talking to a lot of people lately, and sort of around this issue, and a lot of people saying, look, they don't want to subscribe to new things because they feel like their email box is so full anyway. How do you counter that?
So, first of all, you can't please everyone. There are always going to be this vocal minority of people who you send them a few emails and they send you this angry reply about how they're unsubscribing and they're never going to buy and all that, right? But for every one of those people, you have way more people that are either just don't say anything and they continue to buy, or they also are raving fans and they love what you're doing. So first, you just have to accept that. Like, if you try to do everything to cater to that vocal minority, you're going to miss out on a lot. But there are definitely some things you can do to try to tailor the experience for people. So for one of the main things I recommend to people is using segmentation, like I mentioned earlier. So rather than sending out every email, every broadcast campaign that you send out, rather than sending it to your entire list, some emails are worthy of that. A new product launch, a big, Black Friday sale, those kind of things. Of course, you want to send those to everyone. But a lot of times, or I should say most of the time with us, we are sending to different segments. So not everyone on your list gets every email. So we could be sending at a frequency of 2 to 3 times per week, but for the average subscriber, they might only be getting 1 email a week. So that's one thing you can do. And that to me is actually the most important thing, for not just for keeping people happy, but just having better emails. Because when you use those segments, now you can craft the content of the email specifically for that segment. So they're getting a more personalized email. So that's really another part of it is, being thoughtful about the content that you put in the emails. So hopefully people actually want to receive them and they want to stay on the list. But there's other things you can do. Obviously, you want to have an unsubscribe link in your email, but you can also you can set up a preferences center where they click on they can click their email preferences and say, I want to get emails less often. Or you can put, we have like a little snooze button that we'll add to some of our clients' emails, where they can click this button and they'll get added to a segment where they won't receive emails for the next month or the next 60 days. So they might want to take a break for a month or two. And if you're sending at a high frequency, that's another option of something you can do to just make it really easy for people to take a break or see themselves out because obviously you don't want them to click spam, but also you don't really want to create a bunch of customer service complaints, right? So the more you can make it easier for them and just give them those kind of self-serve options, the less you have of people responding back to you saying, hey, take me off your list, or can you, email me less often or whatever.
Yeah. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you was about, how do you get small SMEs, small to medium enterprises, to do email marketing when they feel that they don't necessarily have the time? And before you answer that, I'm going to qualify it by saying that I'm really thinking it's more of an issue with those that don't have such an e-commerce presence. So they might be a business that, due to the nature of what they sell, they're not going to sell a lot online. How do you get people to bring that into the fold as being part of their whole part of their whole marketing suite?
So a lot of times, email marketing is something where it's been around for so long. It's not the new sexy thing. So a lot of times people kind of put it on the back burner. They mean to get to it, but it always keeps getting bumped to the bottom of the to-do list. So part of it is if you just know, if you haven't prioritized it yet and it's been a year or two, then it might be time to bring someone in. It doesn't mean you have to hire an agency. It could be just bringing in an employee, or getting an employee to get trained up on doing this. But so for a lot of times, businesses, again, they know they should be doing it, but they're neglecting it. In other cases, they have their own biases against it. Maybe they tried it in the past and it didn't work very well. Or they just find emails annoying themselves. So they don't want to do email marketing because they find it annoying. And those things, I think, are really more. So for one, if you've tried it in the past and it didn't work, it doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's just like, people say that about Facebook ads. They say that about everything. And the truth is, you have to crack the code. It's not always going to be a home run from the very beginning. So you have to be willing to do some testing. And again, if it's the issue of, like you just have a personal preference against it, then you're just going to have to know you're missing out on a lot of revenue, because there's a lot of things that we personally might not like. Like, for example, a pop-up. Most of us don't really like pop-ups, but pop-ups are one of the highest converting ways that people get signed up to the email list in the first place. So if you don't have that on your site because you don't like them, then, you're missing out on a whole bunch of new leads on your list and potentially a lot of revenue just because you have a personal preference. So it's something where I would challenge them to examine is this just a personal bias, or is there a real data-backed reason for not doing it? And really the challenge comes down to, for most people, is they just don't know what to say. They want the emails to be interesting. And so that goes back to marketing 101 of just doing good research on who your ideal customers are and what they care about. So understanding the pain points, their goals, dreams, aspirations, all of those things, and using those to guide the content strategy for your email. So you don't want every email to just be some random sale. Like, I think a lot of people think that if you're going to send an email, there has to be some big discounted promotion, or else no one's going to care. And that's just simply not the case. You really got to think about, how can I be useful for people? So, there are companies that I'm a customer of who don't sell online. So for example, like some of the local service businesses I work with, they want to come out, do a quote in person, all that, right? But they still do email marketing. And a lot of times they're, say for example, like the lawn care company I use, they'll do tips for lawn care tips or other things related to taking care of your outdoor spaces that are relevant to that time of the year, that are actually useful and interesting. And I've noticed that the HVAC company we use does the same sort of thing. So again, it always goes back to the customer. If you have this customer centric approach and you're really focused on what they care about, there's always a way to find something that can be useful or interesting to people to send them.
Yeah. And the thing too is, putting aside whether you use an agency or not, it doesn't cost anything. It's not like you have to pay Facebook to put your ads up of that. You can choose to get an agency to actually do the emails for you. But that aside, it doesn't cost you anything. You can do it as much as you like. So it does seem crazy that people don't do it. But in New Zealand, at least I could say, in my observation, an awful lot of businesses, small to medium businesses, don't do it, which seems to me to be a wasted opportunity.
It's very common. I mean, a lot of times the clients that we take on, sometimes it'll be they're already doing it and they just need someone to come in and take it to another level.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they just haven't been doing it. Maybe they did it a little bit here and there in the past, but they've
Yeah.
built up this list and they're just sitting on it and they're not emailing them. And a lot of times those are the ones, especially if they have a good products and they've really been taking care of their customers. Those are the ones where we get rapid results, and people are very responsive just because they are already happy customers. You just weren't doing anything with that list.
Yeah.
So a lot of times companies are sitting on this gold mine. They don't even know it.
Yeah. And so tell me, what do you think are some of the biggest mistakes that you see with email marketing?
So, well, I've already alluded to these. One of them is relying too much on discounts. So thinking that you have to have a discount in every email to generate sales, which is just not true. And the problem is if you go that route, you train your list to never buy at full price. So if you like, it's fine to jump on the holiday sales, but if there's a sale every week or every day, then it's going to be very difficult. You end up backing yourself into a corner that's hard to get out of, where it's difficult to drive sales without discounts. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
Another thing is sending every email to everyone on your list, which we already talked about that, why you would rather use segmentation. But then another common mistake is just really figuring out the right sending frequency for your business. Because I couldn't just give you one rule and say, hey, this is true for every business. Some businesses can get away with emailing more often. They can email multiple times a week and they maintain really high engagement with their list. Other businesses, they're going to be more of a once a week type of sending frequency. And whenever they start to go beyond that, maybe they don't have a big enough list to do a lot of segmentation. It's not really moving the needle when it comes to revenue, and engagement starts to drop. And so it's just not worth the effort to go beyond that. So you have to test this. And what you can do is just start at one frequency, whether it's every other week or once a week or whatever. Do that for a month. Look at the average open rates, click rates, conversion rates, all of that, and then bump up the frequency for the next month and see what happens with the numbers. And then when you bump it up and you get to a point where there's a pretty significant drawback, and it's usually going to be in clicks or conversions, then okay, I've probably reached the limit of the frequency for my business, and you can keep it at that going forward.
So you gave a couple of business examples before, one being the lawn care business and the other one, the air conditioning business. If you were in those two industries, though, I mean, I would think that you'd be struggling to have too much content. How often would you envisage that type of business communicating with their database?
So I'm trying to think of those companies specifically, what they do with us. I don't think that they're even doing weekly emails. I think a lot of those are probably about monthly email cadence. So
Yeah.
for
Oh, I
any
thought.
business, the first priority is getting your automation set up. So all of the welcome sequences, anything you can do that's tied directly to your sales process, and this is going to go for any business that can make the transaction online in some way, or at least book the call or whatever. You want to have all of those set up, and that there's going to be more emails getting sent during those whenever people are active in your sales process, and you might not
Yeah.
be doing as much on the ongoing email side. So that's another
Yeah.
thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think because depending on the industry, some industries simply just don't have too much to talk about. And I guess my concern is if they did try and produce content too frequently, that they actually burn themselves out because they just go, oh, I've got no idea what else to create here. Because, say, with the lawns, I mean, you can talk about the different seasons and what to do with the lawns. You might be able to talk about a new type of grass seed that's come out, some sort of bug that's happening, or new lawnmowers, stuff like that. But you're not going to have the same content opportunities that you would, say, for instance, if you had a online retail business.
Yeah. No, you're completely right. And you don't want to get to where you're just sending fluff to people just because you've decided
Exactly.
that I've got to do 2 emails a week. So, and then you're just sending fluff that people aren't interested in. And that does more harm than good, like you mentioned, where now people just start ignoring your emails. That defeats the whole purpose. So, there's definitely no need to force it just to try to get, and that's why, again, I try to tell people, like, not every business is the same. So just because some other business is doing that frequency of emails doesn't mean that, for one, doesn't even mean it's working, but it doesn't mean you should be doing it. You should really be
Yeah.
going off of what the response that you're getting from your leads and customers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. I agree. Now, tell me, you are big on using AI with your email marketing. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and the role that it can play with email marketing?
AI is very useful for market research. So that's one of my favorite things to use it for. So whenever we first start working with a client, we want to do a bunch of research on their ideal customers and really dial in the messaging strategy. And this is the first thing that any business should be doing before they do any kind of content marketing. And it used to be a very time consuming task to do all of that. And I found that AI can really speed that up a lot to where we can get a lot of those pain points, goals, aspirations, fears, worries, dreams, all that kind of stuff, the demographics, their preferences for, where they shop, how they like to shop online, what kind of other media they like to engage with and consume online, all those kind of things. You can get all of that from AI. Now, it doesn't mean it's all going to be 100% accurate for your business. So once you get, there's a prompt you can use. If you tell ChatGPT or whatever you're using to create an ideal customer profile, and you give it some information about your business, so a general idea of like what you're selling and a general idea of who you're targeting, it will give you a really detailed ideal customer profile. And then from there, you need to go in and use the human element to edit that. So you're going to see things in there that obviously just don't apply to your business. You can just delete them. You're going to see other things where you'd say, you know what, based on the feedback we've gotten, I would actually phrase it this way and things like that. So that's market research is a huge one. Idea generation. So taking that market research and then coming up with ideas for campaigns or even for ideas for subject lines, ideas for headlines. Those are some of the main things that we're using on a regular basis. When it comes to actually writing the copy for the emails, we still have copywriters that are doing that. So we might use AI sometimes to, again, get ideas or get variations of copy, or maybe even to get a little bit of copy to use in an email. But it's definitely not at a place where you can just copy and paste it and expect it to do really well, because AI is just not quite there yet.
Yeah. But from what you're saying, it really helps you to go from a clean sheet of paper to having some good ideas, some good content around creating the profile of your ideal customer.
Yeah, exactly. And you can even do things like, let's say you've sent 4 emails, you can copy and paste those emails into ChatGPT, and then also include the performance metrics, and then ask for ideas based on how these performed. What are some other emails we could be sending? So you can get creative, but I find it more useful for the research and for the idea generation than for actually writing verbatim copy that you're going to use.
Yeah. And does it worry that one day that AI might get to the point that you don't need copywriters and it might cut into your business?
I'm not worried. I do see in my mind in the future, we won't need copywriters or graphic designers. Not to say that some businesses wouldn't want them, but I think we can actually get to a point where AI is so advanced that the emails we're sending out to people are personalized to the individual and not just personalized to different segments of people, which is what we're manually doing now. And so what that means for me, I guess one hand is like, I could just be the one who creates that tool, since this is an idea I've been tossing around for a while.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I'm concerned, but it's definitely a real possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. As we evolve. So, and I know we've kind of touched on a little bit already, but what do you think the secret to creating content that clients want?
So it goes back to the whole market research and really understanding your ideal customers and making the content of the email really more around them. So a template that I give people that they can use for just any random email. So if you have a welcome series email, obviously you're going to be introducing your company and your products and services and those things. I think it's a little easier for people to come up with topics for the emails that are in your sales process because you're answering questions, you're busting objections, all that kind of stuff. The challenge that most people seem to have is coming up with the emails they send on a regular basis now or on an ongoing basis as campaigns. And the template I always recommend to people, I call it the conversation starter. So it's really just taking a topic that your ideal customers would be interested in, and then tying it into a product or service that you sell. So for example, if you were selling supplements, you likely have different customers who are interested in maybe fat loss or building muscle or hydration and all different kinds of things, right? So
Yeah.
I would recommend, instead of trying to cover all of that in one email, focus on one very specific benefit or pain point. So it could just be hydration. And you give some tips for hydration, tips that they could use with or without your product. And then at the end of the email, you would plug your hydration product. So it's kind of like, it's useful enough to where they could go apply this information and get the benefit on their own, or they could make their
Yeah.
lives a little bit easier and they could buy the product. And the goal with taking this approach, this conversation starter approach, is that I want the content to be interesting enough that even the people who aren't in the market to buy today, they will at least think, well, you know what, that was an interesting email. I'll keep opening their emails, because whenever you have the right topic or the right product for them, it's going to be a no-brainer for them, because you've been the one who keeps they keep consuming and engaging with your stuff, so you're top of mind. And then for the people who are in the market, or they were very interested in that particular thing, whenever their time comes up, it's going to be a very easy decision for them to buy. So that's, to me, it's not so much always, it's not taking the approach of we're constantly trying to sell something. We're trying to provide value in some way, whether it's education or inspiration or even just entertainment. And then we just want to do it in a way where there's some sort of natural segue into what we offer, so that what we offer is always readily available to them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So do you know what has been the trend in the use of email marketing, particularly in America? Is it growing? Is it sort of staying fairly stagnant? How does it, relate in terms of numbers of participation as compared to, historic numbers, and also compared to other forms of marketing?
So I don't have the stats off the top of my head. It is still growing. And actually, right now, I've noticed more interest in it than in the last few years. And I think, well, I know from feedback from people that a big part of that is just other marketing avenues are just getting more expensive. So
Yeah.
advertising on social media and on Google just costs more today than it did 5 years ago. There's way more
Yeah.
competition. And the cost to create and produce organic content at scale is just more expensive than it used to be, because the standard of what is good content now is higher than it used to be. So a lot of people are seeing this asset they haven't tapped into, and I'm seeing a lot more businesses say, hey, you know what, we need to revisit some of the other things we could be doing with what we already have, as opposed to trying to go explore new channels or like create a new audience on a new platform or things like that.
Yeah.
So that's something I think that's just probably a sign of, where we are in the economies. And I would expect that over the next couple of years, because it is so cost effective, more businesses are going to be leaning more on email marketing than they have in the last 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's really for a period of time, I would suggest, been kind of one of the forgotten forms of marketing, where it hasn't been, for want of a better description, the sexy option. Everyone's going on, Google, Facebook, TikTok, etc., and it's just been kind of like the poor cousin. But do you think people are now starting to turn around and realize that they've probably done a disservice in the past, and it's got a lot more value than what a lot of them had acknowledged or remembered?
Yeah, and I think it also depends on the business owner. So a lot of people, I mean, there's just so many opportunities online now compared to the past. There's just so many ways to grow an audience and to monetize an audience. And a lot of business owners that have started their business in the last several years have done it really through social, a lot of times through organic content on social. And whether they caught it, whether they were early on TikTok, or they just had their YouTube channel grow a lot or whatever. I mean, all these channels are great. So a lot of times the business owners, it just was never really on their radar, because if they're younger business owners, all of these other social platforms are just way more intriguing. They naturally understand them way better. They know how to use them better. But then when it
Yeah.
comes to the established businesses that have, been in business for a while, and, they're making 7, 8 figures. I mean, email is always like that to them is their absolute favorite thing, because it's just so much more profitable than all the other channels. And by the time they get big enough where they're bringing in consultants, or they're starting to look at what would it be like to get acquired, and what are buyers looking for in a business, and email is always, I mean, people want to see that, okay, can you convert on ads, and what are you doing with your email? Because if they're going to buy the business, those are going to be the two main things that they're focused on to really grow the business.
Yeah. And tell me, speaking of businesses, your business, what sort of customers do you have, and what sort of reach have you got? Like, as in, outside of your own home state, do you have customers across America, or?
Yeah, actually, I'm trying to think. We don't have I've never targeted local businesses specifically, actually. So I have happened to have local clients over the years. I don't have any right now. So yeah, my clients are all over the country, sometimes all over the world. And that was one of the things that actually was intriguing to me when I first got into all of this, just started copywriting, was I liked the flexibility of being able to work remotely with people, and work with people from anywhere, and not have to be tied down to one specific location. So yeah, the businesses we work with pretty much are all e-commerce businesses. So people who are selling physical products online, and we also have some different info creators, or info product creators. So people who sell courses, coaching, things like that as well.
Yeah. And how do you get your customers?
So initially I had started it, whenever I was a freelancer, I was using like freelance job boards. And then over the years, we get clients from referrals. I get clients from my YouTube channel. I've started putting in more effort now into LinkedIn more recently. So I've started to get a few clients from there. And then I haven't really done too much with ads yet, but that's actually the next frontier for me, is to start with either Google or Meta ads, and possibly even YouTube ads, and see what we can get from that.
Yeah. That's the old story, though. Referrals is always the best form, though, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That's by far the best. They're pre-sold. They tend to be, personality-wise, business-wise, they tend to be kind of similar to the business who referred them. So we like all of our clients right now. So I would like to have more people like them. So it's definitely, that's my favorite.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you can work with customers that you enjoy working with, it makes life a lot easier, doesn't it? If you feel like you gel with them.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And just to kind of wrap this up, like, for anyone contemplating getting into email marketing, what would be a couple of tips that you'd give them?
So someone who's looking to get into the field and do email marketing, or a business?
No, sorry. I should have qualified myself better. No, as in businesses that haven't previously used email marketing. They've gone online and done social media ads, etc., and they're now thinking about getting into email marketing. What would you advise them?
Okay, so I think they like to skip this part, and that's why I bring it up so frequently, is that you need to do the initial research of really figuring out who your ideal customer is. But then after that, the first thing to do with your email marketing is getting all of the automations set up around your sales process that you can. So the way to do this is first audit your sales process. So looking at the step-by-step process that someone goes from being a stranger to being a customer. So it could be that for e-com, it's very simple. People land on the site, they go to a product page, they add to cart, start the checkout, complete the checkout. For a lot of other businesses, it's not going to be that simple. It's going to be, they get a quote, and then you have to do a sales call, and then maybe there's a proposal sent afterwards, and maybe there's a follow-up call. Whatever it is, assuming you can track, or you already are tracking these numbers, look at where you have the biggest drop off from one step to the next, And that's
Yeah.
the first place to put in some automated follow-ups, just some emails that are relevant to where they are in the sales process. But ideally, you want to have your entire sales process built out with all the automations that you can that would move them to the next step in the sales process. That right there is going to, because those are automated, you create them once, they run 24/7. That's going to
Yeah.
give you your baseline of revenue from email marketing every month. And if you just had that, you would already be converting more customers, making more revenue. And it's something that it's a kind of a big project, I guess, initially, but then you don't have to mess with it again. And
Yeah.
then from that point on, I would say that's really mandatory. Like, you've got to get that. If you don't have that, you've got to get that in place. After that, then it's looking at, okay, now what are we going to do on an ongoing basis for sending email campaigns? And this is where, again, if you're one of those businesses where maybe you just don't have as much to talk about, or there's just not as frequent of a touch point where you need to be emailing them every week, then look more long-term, look at the entire year and look at, okay, if there are things that are relevant based on the time of year, can you plan content around that, as opposed to just having this, never-ending stream of ideas, and start testing that email frequency. So, and I would say aim to get to where you can do, once every other week, once a week. So some businesses obviously won't get to that, but for a lot of businesses, you can definitely get to that point. And it's just, you got to keep the mindset of always be testing. Not every email is going to be a winner. Some emails are going to be a home run. Some emails are going to be a complete dud. And then a lot of them going to be something in between. So, and then you just want to take those home runs and try to reverse engineer what worked. Like, which segment did you target? What angle did you take? Which offer did you promote? And then keep that in the rotation. So you're taking what you've learned from all the winners, and you're constantly keeping those things in rotation, but you're just, changing it a little bit from how you did it last time, while you're also testing new variables. And that's how you'll get to where you have this more reliable email strategy, where now you're starting to, have consistent success that you can count on from email. And it's not just, completely hit or miss.
Yeah. No, fantastic. All right. Well, I mean, I definitely am a big fan of email marketing. I'm not an expert of your level, but it's something that I certainly believe in and use. And it's to me, it's crazy for you not to do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree.
And with, as you say, the automation sequence you can set up, it's a bit of work up front, but then you just let it do its thing after that. So it can carry a heavy load for you with a little bit of effort in the early stages. So to me, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it definitely, and that, like I said, if they would just do that piece, you're going to get so much further ahead. And it's just something you have to do one time. I mean, yes, you would want to go and check on it again in the future. You don't just set it, leave it forever, but it's really not as difficult as it seems. And once you get it done, it will pay off in dividends for you.
Yeah. And just probably one final question. Do you feel that there's any particular email marketing software that stands out above everyone else, or do you think they're all much of a muchness, so you can't go too far wrong with, most of the major brands?
What I recommend to people is, first, look for email service providers that really specialize in your industry, because it's just going to save you a lot of hassle in all the integrations and getting the tech set up. They're also going to likely have all the features you want or need that cater to your industry. And then, assuming that you have a few options there, and assuming that the capabilities are pretty similar, I would just go with the one that you like the user experience best. Now, that said, there are a few. So we use Klaviyo with almost all of our clients, which that to me is the best one for e-commerce businesses. So if you use Shopify, Klaviyo is just so easy to get to do all those automations like I talked about. Another one I really like is ActiveCampaign. It's another big one. So for businesses where, let's say, their sales processes are a little bit more complicated, they have more moving pieces, ActiveCampaign is really great. For a lot of service businesses, agencies, High Level is a really good one. It's more of an all-in-one platform. So there's a lot of good options out there. But again, I first start with, like, okay, can it cater to my business specifically? Because it's going to make your life so much easier if you can find that. And then
Yeah.
if you don't have that, then go with something that's pretty reputable and that has a lot of third-party integration. So something like ActiveCampaign.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kyle. Really appreciated the conversation. For anyone listening that's interested, we're going to move on and record another segment shortly called Read to Succeed. But for Insights into Success, thank you, Kyle. It's been awesome. And I definitely am a fan of email marketing, and we'll be putting your contact details when we publish this as well. So anyone interested can make contact with you.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for having me.